Before you brew the reality chip, watch this video to learn about which archetypes you can build it, how well the reality chip works in budget, which power levels you can build the reality chip for. I'll name some useful cards and link some helpful resources. The reality chip is 1 and a blue for legendary artifact creature equipment jellyfish. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. As long as the reality chip is attached to a creature, you may play land cards and cast spells from the top of your library. Reconfigure to blue. Attach to target creature you control, or unattach from a creature. Reconfigure only as a sorcery. While attached, this isn't a creature, and it's a 0/4. You can look at the top, you do not have to show it to your opponents. In order to get this ability online as quickly as possible, on turn 1 we'll play a 1 CMC creature. This can be just about any 1 CMC creature, but if we can take advantage of its effect, it's especially useful. Something like Spectral Sailor, which is blue for a creature, which lets you pay 3 and a blue to draw a card, is useful throughout the game and can be cast on turn 1. Artificer's Assistant, Excavated Wall, and Benthic Biomancer are also useful throughout the game. Things that sacrifice like Siren Storm Tamer and Merfolk Wind Robber are good because we can move the reality chip onto a creature, and these give good utility in case we draw them later in the game. Top of library manipulation like Overwhelmed Apprentice, Wall of Runes, and Fairy Seer is good value in the beginning of the game, and it's useful to control the top of my library later in the game. It's worth running 2 CMC ramp creatures. We must wait until turn 2 to play them, which slows down our plan, but it's worth it since they give us ramp for future turns. There's a lot of these effects, I'll just list a few. Ornithopter of Paradise flies and gives us blue. Milliken and Deranged Assistant mill you to make mana. So if there's something on the top of the library you don't want to cast, you can simply mill it with Milliken or Deranged Assistant. On turn 2 or 3, we can cast the reality chip, and on turn 3 or 4, we can attach it. By now we should have the reality chip's ability working. There's a lot of ways we can take advantage of this. In every reality chip deck, shuffle effects like fetch lands become especially valuable, so we can shuffle away the top if we don't use it. It's best to wait as long as possible to play a land, since optimally you'll play it from the top of your library. Scry, Surveil, or other top of library manipulation effects also become especially valuable. If you run enough of these, you should be able to manipulate your library enough to keep going until you run out of mana or get unlucky. I would recommend you run a lot of ramps so you don't run out of mana. And so if you can't win the first turn you play tons of stuff from the top, you'll have more mana next time. But this is where you get more choice. What way will you win once you can cast as many cards as you desire? You can play Omniscience or Dream Halls and cast everything for free. You can storm off with all the cards you're casting and win with something like Aetherflux Reservoir. You can run this as an artifact deck and win using artifact win cons, or you can try and combo off. You can also try and get rid of your library and win with Thassa's Oracle, Jace Wielder of Mysteries, or Laboratory Maniac. Don't use Thoracle outside of CEDH, but if you're not doing CEDH, you can use the others. You can even take extra turns. You'll be casting so many spells you can just rely on good stuff rather than picking a specific way. There's a lot of ways to win in this situation, just pick whatever you like best. Another thing to note is you'll want to run less lands than usual in a reality chip deck, since getting a land on top of your library can stop you from casting spells. Be reasonable with the amount of lands you run, but as you run less lands, you need to run more ramp. It depends on your power level and your average CMC what these numbers will actually look like. Just don't make a deck that consistently gets mana screwed. Also run a ton of removal. You have a lot of cards, and stopping your opponents is one of the best ways to take advantage of those cards. Power level. The reality chip is only as good as the cards you cast from the top of your library, so it's not especially good or bad for budget. To jumpstart your brewing, I left some helpful links and resources in the description. Competing commanders. In CEDH or artifact builds, the reality chip is just a worse Urza, but it fills a pretty unique role and doesn't have any other competing commanders. There are several good cards that I haven't mentioned yet. Codex Shredder, Perpetual Timepiece, Sage of the Beyond, Ethereum Sculptor, and Walking Atlas. Because you'll be using your land drops for your library, you can still put lands from your hand into play. Subscribe if this video helped you with your reality chip deck, and watch this video next because I switched to Moxfield after over 3 years on Archidekt.